Welcome into the NFL Opening Line Report Playoff Edition as we are talking the wild card round here. 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and a Monday night football game as well. Playoff Edition coming your way. I am Drew Martin, joined as always by Teddy Covers. Teddy, welcome on in. Happy Monday morning to you, buddy.
Hey, great to be here, Drew. And as always, I'm just something I was thinking of. I'm like, I better look it up before I go on air. There's always those last minute things as we get ready to break down the 6 wild card games this weekend, and obviously looking forward to the rest of the postseason as well. We'll talk a little bit about playoff futures today. We'll talk a little bit about the system, the only system I know that has worked in the first round. That being said, it didn't work last year, but system-wise, there is something worth talking about for wild card round, and we'll go through all 6 games. So looking forward to it, Drew.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well. And we were talking right before coming on, and a really cool, I guess we could call it trend. What strength of schedule coming into wild card round? It has been a money maker like you touched on. So I'll throw it over to you, Teddy, right before we get into the games. What are some of these angles, trends you want to throw out there to the viewers?
Sure. There's 3 things I want to talk about before we start breaking down the games one by one. And the first one has to do with strength of schedule. All right. When it comes to strength of schedule, and this is the only round of the playoffs that this particular trend has worked. However, it's worked consistently and it's worked long term. Since 2002, the team that had played the tougher schedule, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, the team that played a tougher schedule in the wild card round, 58-33 against the spread with a couple of pushes. Teams that have played the much tougher schedule wild card round, 32-12-1 ATS. So when we look at the long-term numbers, it matters. All right. Now, last year, this did not win. There was 3 games with big differentials. Cleveland against Houston, Pittsburgh against Buffalo, the Rams against Detroit, and it went 1-2 ATS in those 3 games last year. That being said, long-term, this particular, and it passes the smell test. It passes the doesn't make sense test. The teams that are battle tested, that have faced tougher opponents to get here, makes sense that they have an edge in the first round. I'm just going to run real quick. There's a couple that there's 2 double-digit differences. Houston has played the much tougher schedule compared to the Chargers. Green Bay has played the much tougher schedule compared to Philadelphia. That's the 2 that really stand out. One that surprised me a little bit, the Rams played a tougher schedule than Minnesota, despite the fact of how tough the NFC North was. So those were the 3 that really stuck out. Denver faced an easier schedule compared to Buffalo. Pittsburgh faced an easier schedule compared to Baltimore in the other games. And the 2 NFC East teams, Washington and Philadelphia. Washington, the 32nd ranked schedule. Philadelphia, the 31st ranked schedule. So Washington, 2 at the bottom when it comes to SOS in their game against Tampa Bay. So that's just one system that long-term has produced positive results. And again, when it comes to this year's numbers, these are the Sagarin numbers that I'm giving you. I'm not giving you my power rating numbers. I haven't gone through them all yet to get these ready, unfortunately. But it's a pretty good assessment for a basic. So it says take Houston, take Green Bay, and take the LA Rams. Those are 3 that stand out for this week.
Like it, Teddy. Strength is scheduled there. And like you said, it passes the smell test. So great start here. That is something, since 2002, but last year, not so much. Houston, Green Bay, like those looks. And when you say much tougher strength of schedule, is that 10 slots, I believe?
Yes, 10 slots different. Yes. As you're ranking 1 to 32, when there's a differential of 10 or more, that's been the 32-12 ATS. I also want to talk about teasers. All right, because you see a lot of teaser action when it comes to postseason football. My recommendation at this time of year, don't play a lot of teasers. And if you do, make sure they're 2-teamers. What you see from the books, and this isn't necessarily that dissimilar to the regular season, where when the books have 6 games the favorites are lined up on, you just have to make sure that 1 or 2 of those 6 go down so that they don't end up paying all these parlays. So it's not like every game has to be the parlay killer. One game has to be the parlay killer, or 2 games have to be the parlay killer. And that happens in the playoffs as well. All right. When it comes to teasers, all right, what you'll see a good handful of games come in right around the number, and that's great for teaser bettors. But year in, year out, whether it's the wild card weekend, whether it's divisional round, whether it's the championship games for the AFC and NFC, you consistently see what I call teaser killers. 1 or 2 games that are not anywhere near the point spread. And that's all it takes to destroy a whole bunch of teasers and reduce the book's liability. So if you're playing teasers, whether it's 6 point, 7 point, 10 point, whatever you like to play, I would go real light in the postseason when I'm playing 2 teamers. All right. Not 3, 4, 5, 6 teamers. This is not the round to go for these bigger scores, at least in this bettor's opinion. So my advice, pay attention to strength of schedule, avoid the teasers.
Makes total sense, Teddy, picking up what you're laying down there. And you said one more before we get into the games. What were you looking at here?
I want to talk about how to bet playoff futures, because this is one that, and I'm going to talk about this forever. We talk about this across sports. There's 2 ways to bet playoff futures. All right. There's the lazy way and there's the wise guy way. The lazy way. And look, if there's a team I'm going to isolate, it'd be Baltimore right now. I saw Baltimore in 6-1 to win the Super Bowl. All right. And I can make a bet on Baltimore at 6-1 to win the Super Bowl right now. And I can tweet it and Instagram it and all of that. And if it wins, boy, I'll look smart, right? That being said, the way to actually make money in the future markets, in the playoffs, you bet the team you want, and you bet them on the money line, and you roll it over every week. Rather than make that one lazy one bet, Instagram it, whatever you want, you can do that, and you'll end up with about half the return that you would the other way. So however you want to do it. When you talk about the wise guy way, you're betting the team you want on the money line and rolling it over, it offers you flexibility to adjust wager sizes week in, week out. There's no need to hedge, all right, because you're adjusting your wager sizes every week. And the cumulative payout can be twice what you'd get with the standard future book wagers, even more if you're looking at some of the long shots. That's real. So you're looking for me to tweet out the Super Bowl future tickets, you ain't going to see it because I ain't betting them. The appropriate way to bet these and the most profitable way to bet these, whatever future you want, take the team you want, write them on the money line, and roll it over. So that's the appropriate way to bet postseason futures, at least in this better.
Like it, Teddy. We got words of wisdom here from Teddy Covers as we're getting into the games here, guys. NFL wild card round, opening line report style. We're going down in rotation order, and it starts Saturday, January 11th, 375, 376. We get the LA Chargers, Houston Texans, Teddy. I'm seeing mostly -3s. That is the Chargers as the road favorite. There is a 2.5 with some juice. 42 and a hook being the total. It's Chargers at Texans, first game up.
Yeah, of course, for the playoff games, we do not have look-ahead lines from one week to the next. What we do have is a powering number. My powering from this number for this game, LA -1.5. Opened 3 and 43.5 last night. And I'm still going to call it 3, but as you mentioned, there are 2.5s popping. The early money has clearly come for Houston as a home dog. Not crazy. And we've seen some under money as well. 43.5 last night, bet down to 42.5 this morning. Certainly when we're talking about postseason, and I keep on feeling like these two teams have more postseason experience than they have. When I was looking in the book before, I was like, wait a minute. The Texans were in the postseason last year. The Chargers had that awful game against the Jags. What was that, 2 or 3 years ago? But that's really all the postseason experience either of these two teams had. I wouldn't call them battle tested when it comes to the playoffs, and certainly when it comes to current form down the stretch, et cetera, et cetera. Harbaugh and company took care of business far more than Houston. And obviously 3 straight wins to close out the season. It's 5-1 ATS in their last 6 ball games. They've built something of a betting bandwagon in the process. And of course, the name Harbaugh is certainly worth something to a point spread. given his significant success. Houston won yesterday despite sitting everyone, but what people are remembering from the Texans of late, they had 2 points they scored against Baltimore in a game where they couldn't move the football on Christmas, the loss against the Kansas City the previous Saturday, where again the offense didn't move. And really, this offense hasn't worked for the better part of the last month. Since the Texans suffered all those injuries to their receiving core, leaving C.J. Stroud with a limited target availability. The Texans haven't been that good. Now, defensively, this team's still pretty elite. All right. And the bigger issue for Houston of late has been as much their offensive line play as anything, because Stroud hasn't had time to throw the football, mixing in the room to run the football. And when you can't throw and can't run, you don't score a whole lot of points. And that's been the case for the Texans of late. So, interesting game. My initial lean is to the home dog here. I don't know that I'm going to get to the window, but I'm not convinced the Chargers should be laying in this spot. Certainly not as much as the markets say they would. At +3, again, my number says +1.5. And strength of schedule edge does go to Houston in this ballgame. That's a lean. I don't know that I get to the window with it.
Yeah, it does check the box for that system strength of schedule with pointing towards the Texans like you talked about, Teddy. And we got a night game here Saturday night, fun time slot here, 377, 378. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. So an AFC North matchup here, Teddy, with first place and second place in the division for the third time this season. 43 and a hook, 44 being the total. Split line in this one, 9.5 or 10, depending where you're shopping. Steelers at Ravens Saturday night, TC.
Yeah, my powering number is Baltimore 9.5 on this game. Open 9.5. There was a split total. There were 45, 45.5, and 46. Well, those 46s are gone. The 45.5s are gone. The 45s are gone. The 44.5s are gone. It's 43.5 right now /44 for the total. So legit wise guy move to the under for Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Sidewise, yes, there are 10s popping. I wouldn't call that a wise guy move just yet, but certainly the under money in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, the markets, the sharp early money says, be aware that this may be a relatively low scoring affair. Now, that's been the case in most recent meetings. Of course, it's been all Pittsburgh. When we look at the series history, but there's an asterisk to that. The Steelers won games by scoring 19, 20, 16, 16, 17, 17, and 18 points. In the last 9 meetings against Baltimore, they've won those games all scoring 20 points or less. That's 7 wins. 7 times they've beaten the Ravens in the last 9 meetings, and they haven't got to 20 in any of them. And by the way, the 2 losses, they scored 14 and 17. So they haven't gotten above 20 in any of them. So in terms of Pittsburgh's success against Baltimore has been everything about the defense and not so much about the offense. And we look at Pittsburgh down the stretch. You know, when the Steelers won and covered all those games early, we said, yeah, they're kind of living on borrowed time. Yeah, they're winning ugly. Down the stretch, they weren't able to do that. Obviously, 4 straight losses. And again, didn't get above 17 points in any of those ball games, all unders, with the exception of the one game where Baltimore lit them up, scoring 34. And that's the most recent meeting between these two teams. That's the game at Baltimore this season. That's not a long time ago. And it's not a game where either team had anything distracting them other than let's win this game. And Baltimore destroyed them. I mean, it was not a competitive contest, certainly not after halftime of that ball game. You know, and the key, Ravens ran for 220 yards against the Steelers defense. All right. If you're going to run for 220 against Pittsburgh, you're going to win the game. You're going to cover the spread. Obviously, the point spread here is telling us very clearly the markets don't trust the Steelers. And when you talk about divisional rivals that know each other well, you can understand how this could be an ugly defensive-minded game. Again, we talk about all those times where where Baltimore's offense did not work against the Steelers, and that includes most recent meetings. But the most recent one, the Ravens figured them out. And again, if I'm playing one future, which I'm not playing, but if I'm playing one future to win the Super Bowl, it'd be the Ravens. Consider me a Baltimore believer. And worth noting, I didn't read any quotes, The quotes coming out of Baltimore's locker room after yesterday's win, they didn't care about it. It was all, yeah, that's fine. Forward, forward, forward. I like those quotes. In my mind, it was a bet-on group of quotes coming out of the Ravens locker room after yesterday's game.
Picking up what you're laying down there, Teddy, as we got Pittsburgh and Baltimore in the books here, guys. We are turning the page to Sunday, January 12th. We got 3 games on the slate for Sunday, Teddy. It is Denver and Buffalo. The first game up, 47 and a hook being the total. We are seeing anywhere from -8.5 to -9.5. That is the Bills as the home favorite. And I'm looking up the weather here, Teddy. It does look cold in Baltimore. Looks even colder here in Buffalo. Possible snow in the forecast. I'll throw it over to you. First game up on Sunday. It is the Broncos and the Bills.
They said it's cold in Baltimore. Pittsburgh's a team that's used to playing in the cold. It's cold in Buffalo. Denver's a team that's used to playing in the cold. The biggest edges that you find is when Miami has to go to Kansas City and it's going to be 0. And, the warm weather teams that just can't handle the extreme cold conditions. This is not a situation when we talk about Denver or Pittsburgh where, in theory, the opposing teams would be in an unfamiliar, uncomfortable surroundings when it comes to weather. So we look at Denver and Buffalo. My powering number on the game is 8 for the Bills. The market's opened 8.5/9 last night, total of 47.5. We've seen the 47.5's largely been taken out, a little bit of under money down to 47. And we're still looking at 8.5, 9 today. The sidewise, we haven't seen much on this ball game yet, just a little bit of under money. Now, obviously, we're talking about a rookie quarterback on the road in the postseason. The track record for QBs like Bo Nix and company, not very good. And I think that has a lot to do with this point spread and why it is as high as it is for Buffalo, is that knee-jerk reaction, fade the rookie QB. That being said, again, you read the quotes coming out of that Denver locker room. And I would say that is a confident and focused team on the task they have at hand this week. And Buffalo, and of course, Buffalo has played the tougher schedule of the two. So the Bills have the strength of schedule edge, although it's not a significant edge. It is a legitimate edge in that department. And Buffalo, are they the afterthought here? We're talking about Kansas City. We're talking about Baltimore. We're debating whether it's Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson for the MVP. And I really have mixed feelings about Buffalo. Part of me thinks that Buffalo is very live in the AFC and that Buffalo is more than capable of winning it all. Another part of me thinks that this team really is, it's been Josh Allen, and that's why they're as good as they are. And if you contain Allen, if you can keep Allen in the pocket, all of a sudden it's a very different ballgame. I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. This is one I'm going to think about for a day or two. I may not do anything with this ball game. I think the Broncos are liver than your average team with a rookie QB. Their defense, obviously, we saw again yesterday, has been outstanding. And I do have some vulnerability for Buffalo. That being said, could you be shocked if the Bills blew them out? I couldn't be. I wouldn't be. And it's not like Buffalo is a team that, when it comes to postseason experience, the Bills have been there, done that, and they've had plenty of success winning games by margin on this field in recent postseasons. So, yeah, I go back and forth on this one, and usually with games like that, I don't end up playing. But we'll think about it for a day or two, or 3, or 4.
You've got till Sunday. It is the early kick here, guys. As we got the middle game up next, another interesting handicap with the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. It is Eagles -4 in the hook as the home favorite here. TC 45.5 being the total. Packers at Eagles, middle game on Sunday.
And really, from a side perspective, this is the only game that's been jumping around this morning. We saw a bunch of Philly money, then we saw more Philly money, then we saw some buyback on Green Bay. Last night was sitting 4.5 and 46. My powering number is 4. We're still looking at 4.5/45.5 today. It was as high as 5.5 earlier this morning, and the market's bought back on Green Bay at that number. So that's certainly worth noting when it comes to timing your wagers appropriately. there was wise guy support for Green Bay in this ballgame, even after some early wise guy support for Philadelphia. That tells us we're likely to see two-way action, and this line's not likely to get out of control. Now, of course, the question, is Jordan Love, who was banged up yesterday. How banged up is he? He's not even listed on the injury report. I'm expecting him to play. That being said, the loss of Christian Watson for the Packers is meaningful in the one sense that Watson's their deep threat, and he stretches the field, and you want that against Philadelphia. And without him, it's worth something. That said, Green Bay does have a deep receiving core. Watson, they've had guys in and out of the lineup all year, and I don't know that Watson's absence alone is a significant detriment to Green Bay's chances. Now, Green Bay went 0-5 this year against the 5 toughest opponents they faced: Minnesota, Detroit, and the opening day loss to Philadelphia in Sao Paulo. That was in Brazil. Or was it Rio? I forget where it was. Where it was in Brazil, and that was a game in which Green Bay started poorly. They got themselves back into it, and they found a way to lose it at the end. But they weren't outclassed in that game. I don't think they were outclassed in this ball game. From a strength of schedule standpoint, this is the biggest edge we have. Green Bay's 10, Philly's 31 out of 32 teams. The NFC North faced a bunch of weak opponents, and really, when you start looking at the Eagles' schedule and going through it game by game, you're like, wow, they really didn't face a whole lot of anybody. Philadelphia, they had Washington, of course, the game where the Commanders turned the ball over 6 times, and Philadelphia still lost that. They had Pittsburgh when the Steelers were slumping. They beat Baltimore. That was the game that Justin Tucker missed field goals, and they lost the box score by margin, but found a way to win. They beat the Rams. That was maybe the most impressive win that they had in LA. Of course, that was all their fans. They beat Washington before that. They had a 17-point loss to Tampa, and then the game at Green Bay. So it's not a ton of games against quality competition for Philadelphia. When they played that quality competition, they weren't always at their best. The opposition wasn't. And Philly certainly was on the right side of the turnover margin. And that's key, because Green Bay's success, in large part, you look at their turnover margin and say, wow, the Packers lived on turnover margin all year. Well, one, so they don't turn the ball over very much. And two, you look at the end of the season numbers, and Philadelphia's right there with Green Bay as an elite team when it comes to turnover margin, just to get the actual numbers right here, of course, which now I had a minute ago and I've somehow clicked out of it. But to get the specific numbers for turnovers this season, margin, Bills are number 1. Plus 24. Steelers 2, Packers and Chargers and Vikings all at plus 12, tied for 3rd. The Eagles are plus 11. So they have a 1 turnover differential over the course of the season, different from Green Bay. So oftentimes you'll see in the postseason the teams that lived off turnover margin don't get the love. And of course, Buffalo is certainly one of those teams from the wise guys. That may be the case this year as well. But when it comes to the Packers' early success with turnover margin, that was a big part of their first half of the season. They were plus 17 at the halfway point. Didn't carry over to the back half of the season where they didn't win the turnover margin. But Philadelphia, also a team that in many ways lived on the positive turnover edge for the season. Green Bay, 19 giveaways. Philadelphia, only 15. They really protected the football very well.
Great stats there, Teddy. Man,
lose in the first round. Yeah. Just last thing. Sorry, I was done, and then there was one more thing I wanted to say. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's worth noting Philadelphia did lose as chalk in the first round of the postseason last year.
Sure, TC. And great stats. Turnover margin. I didn't realize Buffalo plus 24. Man, that's an eye-popping stat there, guys. And we also
only had 8 giveaways. Only 8 giveaways all year for the Bills. So all this Josh Allen turns the ball over. Josh Allen did not turn the ball over this year.
Well, and Teddy, I mean, a lot of people, like you kind of mentioned, maybe not getting the love here coming into the playoffs. Turnover margin, particularly not turning the ball over, I almost feel like that could be, that's repeatable. A quarterback that doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but we can get into that with the question and answer at the end, guys. Fire away in the live chat, also in the comments below. We do have a couple questions we'll get to from the comments of last week's show. And we got the promo code here, Teddy7 at checkout. Get 7-day all access from Teddy Covers, only $77, $11 a day with the coupon code Teddy7 at checkout. We got the night game here, Teddy, for Sunday, Washington and Tampa Bay. It is the Bucs -3 with juice at most shops right now, 51 being the total. Washington heading to Tampa Bay here for the Sunday nighter.
Yeah, my powering number for the game, Tampa -3. As you mentioned, it was Tampa 3 with juice, although it's 3 -15 at a lot of books, not 3 -20, which tells us that it's not on the verge of getting pushed up. We're not going to see a 3.5 on this game for Tampa. I'd be very surprised if we do. I think it'll continue to be 3 and juice. Total 50.5 last night, 50.5 this morning. I haven't seen a lot to push this up and over, although I would not be surprised at all. There's one game where we could see some oversteam, and could well be this one. And notice we've seen under money in this game, under money in that game, under money in the other game, not in this Sunday night affair between two relatively high scoring ball clubs. And again, we look at the strength of schedule here. Tampa fairly weak in the upper 20s, but Washington the weakest strength of schedule of any team in the NFL this year. They got the right teams at the right times, which is at least a big part of the reason why they're here and why we're not likely to see a whole lot of wise guy support for, again, a rookie QB on the road in the postseason, whether it's Bo Nix, whether it's Jaden Daniels. That's not something that we tend to see the wise guys get support. And of course, Tampa gives support to. Tampa won a playoff game last year as a home dog against Philadelphia. My clients and I cashed with that bet. And certainly, it's a Bucs team. We talk about battle tested. They've been in these spots. It's the 4th straight year. Tampa's won the division. The 5th straight year they've been in the postseason. And they certainly played good football down the stretch. And it feels like the Bucs maybe don't have as big a betting bandwagon as they should. Of course, they lost that game to Dallas a couple of weeks ago. They did not cover against New Orleans yesterday. So from a betting bandwagon standpoint, it's not a Bucs team that the bandwagon perhaps as big as it should be. I'm a Tampa believer personally. The Washington's not an easy team to step in front of necessarily. That said, let's be real. Washington's here. Their strength of schedule has been easy. They've overachieved a little bit. They've been on the right side of a number of tight decisions like the one they did yesterday, and they got a decent betting bandwagon with 5 straight wins heading into the postseason. And, certainly the win against Atlanta was impressive. The win against Philadelphia, despite the turnovers, was impressive. It'd be interesting to see what type of support Washington gets moving forward. They can sneak past Tampa. And, of course, my powering number is 3. The markets are at 3. The markets aren't. It's not like the Bucs are, despite their postseason experience, are being priced head and shoulders as better than Washington. Good game on Sunday night, and one that has certainly shootout potential. Like I said, this is the one that we've seen over money for, or at least no under money for, and that tells us something. Just like when Pete Rose was betting. If he didn't bet on the Reds that day, he's telling us something. Just like if he did bet on the Reds that day, he's telling us something else. There you go.
Fun day of football on Sunday, TC, as we got the 3 games and we got one on Monday night, guys. So it's January 13th. It's the last wild card round game, and it's the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Rams, guys. -1.5 at most shops right now. That is the Vikings as the road favorite. 47 and a hook being the total. I'm seeing anywhere from -2 to pick 'em at the WagerTalk live odds screen as we're doing it, but it's Vikings at Rams here to end the wild card round here, TC.
Yeah, so my number on the game was Minnesota -0.5 point. I write that 1/PK. That means I'm comfortable with the 1. I'm comfortable with the pick 'em for that number, but my powering number, Minnesota -0.5 point. Markets were at 2.47 last night. We have seen some LA money, 1.5. The prevailing number today. But as you mentioned, there's a couple of sharp shops that are lower than that that have this game priced much, much closer to pick 'em from a strength of schedule standpoint. And this one surprised me until I really looked at it. The Rams, tougher strength of schedule than the Vikings. Like, what do you mean? The NFC North teams faced a brutal slate. Obviously, they faced each other. Well, yeah. Look at Minnesota down the stretch. Indy, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Chicago, Arizona, Atlanta, Chicago again, Seattle, and the Packers and the Lions to close out the regular season. But much of that was a bunch of games against mediocre teams from mediocre divisions. So in that sense, I'm like, well, I guess, in my mind, I'm like, really? The Rams had a tougher SOS? And then you look at what Minnesota's just faced, and you go, yeah, they did. It's not like the Rams had Detroit, the NFC West. And the NFC West, while it was mediocre, teams were all power rated reasonably high. All right. They had Green Bay. And obviously they played Minnesota. They played the NFC North teams all once. They had Philadelphia. They had Buffalo. So it wasn't like the Rams had it easy. And of course, certainly Minnesota played hard in week 18. It didn't go well for them. We saw Sam Darnold finally show. Sam Darnold's been so good. We're not used to seeing a bad game from him like the one we saw last night. And I'm certainly not used to seeing Minnesota beat up the line of scrimmage the way they were defensively last night. That could well be a concern here. But one thing you have to know, even for a playoff game, home field edge. The two teams that play in SoFi probably have the least home field edge in all of football. There'll be plenty of Viking fans in that venue, just like there were in the LA's games against just about most opponents that they face. So worth noting in that regard. It's also worth noting that LA's offense hasn't really worked all that well down the stretch. They won 3 straight games where they didn't get to 20 points, which speaks to their defense playing better, but also speaks to the quality of competition. Interesting game on Monday night. We're still thinking about this one. The initial lean towards the home dog, but I don't know that I get to the window there.
Like it, Teddy. And guys, shout out to the live chat. We got football coach, Titan CT, Quam in the house. All you guys, fire away any questions before the end of the show. We'll answer them in the live chat. We also got a couple questions from last week's show in the comments below. So if you're watching on replay, fire away any questions where you're watching from. Teddy and myself will be in there chiming in throughout the week. We do have a question from last week's show here, Teddy, from 1692. Question: do you find it harder or easier in the NFL playoffs when compared to the regular season, Teddy? For handicapping purposes, hey, harder or easier in the regular season or the playoffs, TC?
I'm going to call the playoffs harder with exceptions. And this is why. In the regular season, you got 16 games every week. In the playoffs, you have less than that. So there are fewer games to choose through. And when you're going through the card of the regular season, all right, I'm not playing this one, I'm not playing that one. Oh, let's look at this one, let's look at that one. You just have more games to look at. So in that sense, it's easier. And NFL lines are pretty tight year round. That being said, when it comes to the postseason, you're not going to see any of these lines bounce around. Unless there's injury situation. That's what happened with Green Bay, Philly, with Watson hurt and Love and the questions about Love. But that's the only side that's really moved so far. So it's not a scenario where you're able to take advantage of a whole lot of extra line value from line moves. That said, I love the postseason, and you find 1 or 2 plays every week generally in the postseason that stand out. So in that sense, I like it, but overall, I'm going to say postseason harder than regular season just because there's fewer games to choose from. And the lines, there are no mistakes this time of year.
Sure, Teddy. Yeah, a limited choosing, if you will, in the playoffs. We also got Mickey in the house saying, Teddy, buddy, I've hit the like button 18 weeks in a row. Been commenting as well. We need to know, are you going to do an opening line report for next season win totals?
So the answer to that is maybe. The problem is there's no definitive date to do a lot. I like to do a show come the beginning of May, right after the draft. We should lock in on that, Drew. Okay, so let's say yes. After the draft, Drew and I will make sure that because last year I think we dawdled around and didn't do it. And thank you for watching all 18 weeks of the regular season. Thank you for all the likes. Appreciate it very, very much. And let's give him another shout out. But yeah, Drew and I will do an OLR after the draft when those first season win total numbers come up, it'll probably be whether it's the first or the beginning of May is my guesstimate about when the draft is the last week of April, isn't it? Yeah, and it's the week after that we usually see the numbers start to get populated appropriately. So yeah, I'd love to. Sure, count us in. Drew, remind me. That's your job.
Sure.
Put it on your calendar.
Okay.
But yeah,
thanks, Mickey, for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll put it we'll pencil it in here, guys, for after the NFL draft, maybe the week after, 2 weeks after, somewhere in that time frame. And then when do you release the season win total report, Teddy? It's a couple. Is that in May? You've been going earlier, right?
So no. So I've been varying the times the last couple years, and I think the sweet spot is late June / early July. By mid to late July, the markets really start to move. That said, that's when you're starting to get your best info. There's a post draft. There's is when I like to start to get to work. So the answer is that and I released in June a couple times, and I thought June was a little bit too early. In terms of my own ability to filter through everything. The season win bets are big. All right. I make big bets on them. My clients make big bets on them. They've won long term. They won short term. We won again with the report this year. So it's not anything I want to do half-assed. All right. And the bottom line is usually I put it out when I'm ready. So post draft, we get to work. I would anticipate it would be late June, early July, but that's in pencil, not in pen.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that report, guys. I read it and use it for my handicapping as well. It's something you can get in the 1 year all access. It would be included in the NFL full season, included as well, guys. And remember the promo code Teddy7 at checkout. Discount there on the week pass with Teddy covers all picks and all sports. So Teddy, man, you've hit on a lot. You've hit on all the games for this upcoming week. Love the strength of schedule stats you threw out. Also teaser killers and the playoff futures. That's something that kind of correlates with not only the NFL playoffs, but other sports as well, playing that money
Very
line.
much.
Just keep that in mind, guys, in other sports. But Teddy, I'll throw it over to you, man. Anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, there's so much to talk about. But I really want to thank you guys for being a part of this show every week. Genuinely, here we are, it's 2025. I've been doing NFL opening line reports. I think I started in 2004. The audience has just steadily grown. I appreciate very, very much your support. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the likes. We appreciate the follows. Thank you. And again, this Teddy7 at checkout gets you 7 days all access for $77. Get a little discount if you want to get on board for this opening wildcard weekend and get every hoops play. Oh, and the college football playoffs as well coming this week. So Teddy7 at checkout will get you on board. And thank you for watching. Happy New Year. All the best in 2025.
Absolutely, guys. Comment below. Smash that like button for Teddy Covers. I'm Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.